Julian is now 18 months old, which is pretty crazy. It's been, about a year and a half since we've been parents. So we thought we'd do this little update. We ideally would have done it sooner, but a year and a half is still a pretty big milestone. So we thought we'd recap 5 things that we've learned so far as new parents.
We've been meaning to check in, but just time flies, especially when you have a kid. So we just never got around. And at first you're like, oh, he's so small, he doesn't do that much. And all of a sudden it's like a handful, so then it becomes hard to do things. But I guess what is the first thing that we have learned? It's just really transformative to your life, I guess, and just how busy you are.
I think for me personally, I was saying earlier that I've learned that before having Julian that selfish is kind of the wrong word, but more self-centered, right? Like you have all the time in the world to do things for yourself, which is just like, now it's like you have to purposely carve out time for yourself, which is pretty crazy. So it just makes you realize that earlier you had so much time to do whatever you wanted, and now it's not, like, you're not the priority anymore. You have to really reprioritize your life.
Yeah, you are told when you become a parent, oh, you'll be busy, you won't sleep, this and that, but until you live it, you really don't understand what that means. Like, you are 24/7 hands-on, and if something's wrong, an alarm is going off, literally. So, that's not how you've ever lived before. And another thing it makes you is appreciate what your parents did for you, because until you have your own child, you never know what they went through and how much they did for you. It's something completely different to just being a young adult, really.
Yeah, just that feeling of taking care of something else, and not just something, but someone else, because people do liken it to having a pet, which we could do a whole separate video about how that's not really a fair comparison.
It's downright insulting.
But yeah, it's very different. There are some similarities maybe at first, but raising a dog versus raising a child is so different. And yeah, it's definitely that time commitment that you just never really realized how much of yourself it was going to require to raise someone. And yeah, it just gives you that perspective whenever you do see like another adult or just any kind of human above the age of 1, just how much work and money has gone into raising that person. And so it's really sad if that person has turned out to be a drug addict or something, homeless on the streets. It just gives you a different perspective on age, I guess, and how much time and effort has gone into raising somebody.
Yeah, that's right. So it's really a lot, and it changed my perspective when I think of children and someone is like, oh yeah, I have a 6-year-old, and I'm like, oh my God, that's ancient. You must have done so much work. You used to be, I think, a 6-year-old, that's nothing. That's like a total baby, little child. But 6 years old is actually a huge effort on someone's behalf. Yeah, and then the other thing that goes along with that is you are generally not told very much or very well how much actual physical effort, hands-on work you're having to do with a small child. It's constant, 24/7, or as long as the child is not sleeping, you are having to use your entire body to do things for them. And it's like all kinds of tasks are so difficult, like putting their clothes on, picking them up all the time, like 24/7. Then after they start moving, you have to protect them, and you're always on them, hands on the whole time. It's actually like a workout the whole time.
So I guess to summarize up until this point, because we've kind of just been going on a little tangent, which is very easy to do on this topic, but yeah, the first one was how much we've had to be less about ourselves and focus on growing another human, raising another human really, because just physically growing them is one aspect, but then there's more to it as you're raising them. The second, I guess, is just realizing or appreciating how much parents, whether it's your parent or someone else's parents, have gone through, and just, appreciating how much work that was. The third being, I guess, the physical awareness of you want to be able to keep up with and not only care for your child, but keep up with them and be able to do things with them, which means you got to prioritize your own health. And, that's eating well, but also just being more physically active, stretching more, like you want to be able to run with your kid or be able to do things with them.
Yeah, in our case, we always were into fitness. We always were very healthy and active. So it's not like we've had some kind of revelation, but it actually really helps that we have been so because right now you have to run after them, you have to do a lot, and you also need that spark and the ability to be empathic and understand what they're going through, instead of you being some kind of old curmudgeon that's always like, don't do this, don't do that, I don't want to get off my ass and save you from falling on your face. Because many parents fall into that, especially if they're older or decrepit, which many 30-year-olds are, let's be honest, these days. And so we, having been into fitness our whole lives, are actually benefiting from that. I feel like I have it in me to raise a small child at the moment, despite being mid-30s. Maybe do it one more time, but I don't see it another third time after that, because it is really a lot. So something that goes with that is you probably want to start earlier than you're thinking of starting. Especially millennials are like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this and that and get 6 dogs and go to whatever, Jamaica or Tahiti, and start a TikTok channel, and when I'm 65 I'm gonna have a child. That's not at all realistic, actually.
Yeah, so I guess like to broaden that, point number 4 being maybe it's just like the passage of time, like time actually goes by faster than you think. And like in the beginning, people are always like, oh, or when you're in the thick of it, I guess, and you just brought this baby home, you don't really know what you're doing, it needs you 24/7, it's eating every 2 hours or less, and it just feels like, oh God, is this my new life? Like, what have I done? Like, my life is ruined kind of thing. But it's such a short phase and it goes by so quickly. People are right when they tell you that, oh, you got to savor every moment of that chaos in the beginning, because they grow out of it so fast. And it's true. So I think we all kind of have that feeling of, oh, when I have kids, my life's going to be over. And in a way it is, right? Because that initial life that is all about you does have to shift a lot. But it goes by so quickly. People tell you that all the time, but even us a year and a half into it will tell you that it's completely true. And I'm sure it just goes by faster the older they get.
Well, that's a major point for many reasons, because the child changes so much. So right after they're born, you have no idea what you've gotten into, right? And you cannot sleep. It's hard. But it really goes by so quickly that as soon as you get on top of something, it immediately changes completely, and you have to learn a whole new thing. And so it's a constant roller coaster. It's not like, oh yeah, I had a baby, I got on top of it, I'm good now, because just about when he became 1-year-old, he got harder to take care of, and it's not like they're newborn and they're hardest. So yeah, you keep in mind, having that life learner type of approach is the only way, truly. There's no real principle that you can read from a book and apply. What you gotta do is constantly observe and learn and adapt. So having that mindset is really the only way.
With that said, though, it brings up an interesting point that, some people also, one of the arguments of they don't want to have kids is, oh, I don't feel that motherly instinct, or I don't know how to be a parent. And I think, maybe some people, like if they've been around a lot of kids, if they've had big families, maybe they do have more parental instincts, but I do think that most of us, like, it is something that we have to learn. So, like, I know both of us have been trying to research, we've been reading about parenting. You don't necessarily, use it word for word, but it is good to have some kind of guide, and that no one is truly, born with the idea of how to be the best parent. It's something that you always have to work on.
Yeah, that is true. I'm the youngest in my family, so I wasn't around younger kids than myself really ever up until Julian. And with him, certain instincts in you awaken. It's not like you didn't have them or something, but you just never had to use them. So once you do have them, it's really, to care for somebody is a very different thing than to go to the gym to be stronger. Those are different types of instincts. But together with that goes yet another major point, is that the kind of fulfillment you get from having a child is like nothing we've ever experienced. I would say before we had a child, the most interesting and altogether enjoyable and fulfilling things was running a business, which we did for like 10 years so far.
And we still are.
Yeah,
by the way.
That's right. But now looking at the business is like child play, for kind of pun intended. But it's so much simpler and easier to run the business. Career is so much easier than a business even, and now a child is so much harder than altogether all of these things, but the fulfillment is much higher as well. So another thing about your parents and appreciating them also has to do with, you now understand how they felt about you, how much they loved you, how much they cared for you, and that changes so much in how you see your parents actually. You touched upon talking about the method or the guide, how you're parenting. So one thing to mention here, we'll expand on this topic a lot in further videos, but so far what we like the most as far as advice goes is either what is Montessori or earlier philosophy of Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They're both based on watching the child and allowing them to express their nature, and then giving them the liberty to fulfill that nature instead of crushing it or stifling it too much. We don't believe so much in the hard punishments or spanking or whatever else. We think that the child has a nature that is the most beneficial to them, and you have to let it blossom.
Mm-hmm. But to be fair, there are a lot of different parenting philosophies out there, and so that's why it is important to, as much as you can, read about them, figure out what aligns with what you value, and be able to use that as you're raising a child, because there's a lot of different people that give you advice every day, every time you meet someone new. They'll give you advice about what to do, and I think our friend Harold from Umami Kushi actually gave me the best advice. He's like, the best advice I can give you as a parent is don't listen to anybody else. Like, you've just got to do what works for you.
Yeah, and that goes to the degree, like for example, my mother's college degree is early childhood education, so she actually knows about this a lot, but she for some reason cannot comprehend that our child is not cold like she thinks from 10,000 kilometers away. So half the time she's telling me how cold must my child be, and I'm like, no, he's not cold, he's actually very hot and usually sweaty, especially when he was younger. Therefore, you're not really helping me by telling me 1,000 times to put on more clothes on him when he actually sweats through them. It doesn't make any sense.
Oh God, yeah, he did do that. That was a phase. For a long time as a baby, he would wake up just in a puddle of sweat. And you're like, oh my God, did he pee himself? I'm like, no, sweat. Just sweat, and that is from me, because I will do the exact same thing. So.
Right, so I don't sweat and my family doesn't so much. So what's interesting is that even my sister-in-law, they cannot comprehend, being Eastern European, that the child can be warm or even hot. They think they're always freezing. When you go to Eastern Europe, you see children with the wool socks and the wool hat in July out on the playground, and they're like a marshmallow, like in a spacesuit, stifled, like they can't move. And they think that's normal. I think normal is, yet again, observing them, allowing them to express their nature, judging that moment what is best, having the first-hand information from that observation.
Well, that's our first little installment on our parenting videos. We want to do many more of these. We've been wanting to do them, but it's been very tough to find time for both of us to film when Julian is not, crying, making noise, wanting to play. So it's been a little tough for us to do them, but we will try to make a better effort at making more of these videos, because we not only want to share with you guys, but we just want to document it for ourselves.
Yeah.
Like, if we can do regular check-ins like this, I think it'd be really interesting to go back later and be like, oh my God, that's what we were thinking when he was 1.5. Now he's 10. Like, wow.
That's the thing. So even going back, our concerns have changed a lot over this 1.5 years. First, it was all about trying to get a night's sleep. That was the main milestone. We did that. Then there was the milestone of him eating solid food. We started training him at 6 months old. Then there was the milestone of him beginning to walk. And
crawl.
Yeah, so first he crawled, then he walked. So after he started walking, it's about keeping him safe a lot. So that started becoming really engaging, hands-on the whole time. Actually, much more time-consuming than before when he was a baby. Then he learned to walk now, and now he's learning to talk. So we're having to actually instruct him at this point, and he's communicating now something like 20 words, and he's picking up a new one every day, pretty much. So we have entered yet another new phase at this point, so it has changed so much.
And actually today, it's Christmas Day, and he's entered yet another phase of being able to walk downstairs by himself, unassisted. Right. Like, wow.
And the same day as that, he started saying the word stare. So he says, star, stare.
Star, but he points, yeah, he knows.
Yeah.
And yeah, cars has been another one. He's solidified cars. He knows what cars are. So yeah, it's just every day's an adventure.
Yeah, that's not an
way.
exaggeration. So a lot of what we've said might sound cliche to you, but until you live it, you truly don't understand the magnitude of
It's
what
true.
people are telling you.
Yeah.
You know, we have had to live a different life. But this, my closing thought actually is, it was not true when people had some kind of jaded advice or state of mind towards having children, when they tell you, oh, your life is over, you'll never go again, you'll never have fun again, you know, everything sucks from here on. That's not true at all. Actually, we have continued traveling, we enjoy our life actually more with him, and we don't at all recommend to anybody to forego having children.
And along those lines, like, I don't know that I've met anyone that has said things like that, like negative things like, your life is over, you're gonna regret it. Like people that have actually had kids that have said that to my face. You know, I feel like I've seen it on social media, but I don't personally know anybody with kids anyway who has said that.
Well,
and if people without kids are telling you that, then they haven't been through it. So I don't think you can really trust what they say.
well, that's the thing. There's an extremely selfish narrative actually out there that, you know, it's very common with our generation actually, because many are just full on trying to live for themselves only, and they think a child is out to ruin their life, and that's not true in our experience. In our experience, it has enriched their life in so many ways, and I cannot really see myself not having him anymore. It would make life so empty.
Yeah, like I think my closing thought would be, and I try to tell this to other people that ask, but if you're into adventure and you want, you know, the greatest adventure of your life, it's having a child. Ideally with a partner where you both can do it together. If you're a single mom, I'm sure it's a completely different story. But as long as you have a partner, you have support, then yeah, I don't think that there's any greater adventure than having and raising a child.